created my own little algorithms to do one thing or another, like disease states, a mortality algorithm, and
I think you will have a whole levels of robotics, the humanoid robots or non-humanoid robots, whatever the case is.
But the one that I really gravitated towards was Alteryx. Low code, no code, business intelligence stuff, data science, machine learning, things like that.
Audio, or text, and then there's big metaverse bug. Everybody knows the metaverse.
Another week of AI.
What?
All right.
Yeah. That's without practice.
That would be 1000% one of the best ones I've ever heard it coming into the start of the show.
I was practicing that today.
Welcome, Jason. Today, we're as hosts, we're guesting. I mean, we have a guest. Jason, and he's one of our. He kind of hits the heart and hits it in my heart whenever it comes to the areas of nerds. Because I hate to call you nerd, but I'm a nerd in the data field. Sometimes not excited. We're going to make it exciting today.
Yeah.
Today, Jason, he's the Enterprise Data Officer for the U.S. Army, and he's going to bring us
Army University.
I'm sorry, the Army University. My apologies.
That's a big responsibility. So I need to shrink smaller.
Exactly, the Army University, and we're going to be covering some insights in data science and data. So, Asif, Jason.
Yeah, I think it's just been almost like eye-opening conversations with Jason on every level, I would say, because when you are in charge of Army University and you're in charge of Army University's students that goes through Army University, you're talking about developing the leaders who will make decisions in the field, in the offices, in the places where their decision will impact not just them, but I would say a whole lot of people, and I don't want to limit this whole lot of people, right? So, Jason, when we're talking about data and when we're talking about like information, right? How do we get people from information to data, and how do we get them to understand that data is the one that they really have to rely on, because it's not necessarily coming from their brain, but it's coming from other people and other people's understanding of information. And then now that you put it on digital, oh boy, right? So when you say, your roles and titles, that's a lot of responsibility. So I feel the depth of your concerns.
Yeah.
And as we speak more about it, I think we get a little bit closer to the solution. At least I'm hoping that we get to a solution where we say, beyond us is the past. In the future, we won't even say like, well, yeah, just because we talked about it, we actually kind of overcame it, right? So Let's get into it, Jason. How you doing?
I'm doing well. So just to get some formalities out of the way, people who don't know me call me Jason, right? And this played in great. I mean, we've been having some great conversations. My friends and my allies call me JB. It's just something that quickly abbreviates. Had a very magic moment. I had some friends in the audience when I was at West Point this past summer, talking data literacy, and somebody was like, my friend was like, "Hey, everybody calls you Jason, but I call you JB. What gives?" And so to about 100 people, I'm like, "Yeah, to my friends, I'm JB." And so I walked out of there with like 120 friends from all over the Army. And that was a neat experience to that point. So to your point, right? So Army University is a microcosm of the larger Army. And you're right. We were kind of talking earlier, going, "Hey, look, I'm not going to teach data science or data literacy per se, but my number one thing is how do we integrate the decision making right? We talk about a data-driven decision and that sort of stuff, to the techies and the leadership. So kind of walk in that world between the two to where the decisions are the most efficient, effective decisions based on the conditions. And we apply the right tech because that's what the decision makers are asking for, because they know what's available and how, and the capabilities, right? So I have a boss, we just got a new director at the college at my old job, and it was, he was talking about requirements, authorities, resources, and risk. And if you can put those in those 4 bins, right? So what's the requirement? Do you have the resources to meet the requirement? Do you have the authority to leverage those resources, or do you need to go out? And then risk, mitigate risk, right? And risk is the loss and waste of resources, time, people, right? Equipment, that kind of stuff, right? And that was kind of my interpretation. It was like, okay, so when you have a leader who thinks that way, now I can take that down to the guy that's chugging on code and say, hey, let me tell you how the new boss thinks. Right. And I have the knowledge to now talk in a language that the tech knows. The guy who's been coding for 20 years, I can now talk about requirements and authorities, aka permissions, right? Resources, as in the time it takes to build the code and test and all that other stuff, right? That we can't spin on a dime to do this stuff, right? And then the risk of, hey, what in the tech world could make a risk that this thing fails, or, you know, goes off and has effects that we then make the conditions worse, right? So, you know, it once you put it in a bin like that, and that's, so the new position that I've kind of been in, I'll start here later this month. That scope and scale that I was working at now just went, right? The demographics of you know, the diversity of leadership and organizations, and each organization has its own objective. Understanding their objectives, it feeds into the bigger, larger objective of the Army, and then DoD. Yeah, so I've been doing my homework, right? You know, I make a list. Hey, what am I going to do in the next 30 days, right? What's the university going to do in the next 30 days? And how am I going to play into that 30 days? 60, 90, 180, right? 12 months, 5 years.
Yeah, the strategic vision, right? I mean, we can all talk about strategy and operations and tactics. So, you know, in the operational level, tactical level, how does your strategic play out throughout all these cycles? And you get 5 years, you got 5 months, right? So, you know, if the strategy doesn't work in 5 months, there's no point of having a strategy for 5 years because you're not on track.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Somebody, so I always imply that when we walk into a room, by the time we realize we're actually having a conversation, is because we realize one corner of the room wants a robot. The other corner of the room just wants to follow what's on YouTube. And the guy in the middle probably is just a PhD that wants to fix his Excel sheets. So requirements goes out the window if we cannot have a vision that aligns. These are the operational guys. Yeah, these are the tactical folks. So if I was to help them strategize, I cannot have my own view because they don't have that in them yet, right? So when your leadership does this bin level understanding, that's, I think, I want to go back to something that we are experiencing in a wider population today, which is ChatGPT. Right? If you look at ChatGPT, think about that. It actually does all this bin work for you, right? And this is what I mean by that. Previously, I would say, you know, I have to do some task, and I'm just going to go by and doing that. You know, as of ChatGPT come out, I've changed dramatically.
Yes, oh, absolutely. Same here.
It changed me that I go in front of ChatGPT in the morning and say, I'm going to do this task. You know, talk to me. Wow, ChatGPT has breakdowns, and then it adds additional bullet points. So, say for example, risk mitigation. Right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
about risk mitigation. ChatGPT
Yeah.
will say, if you do this task, here's a requirement, here's something else. But the risk mitigation part of it is that say, if you don't do it today, or this is the risk behind it, okay.
Yeah.
What, ChatGPT? Thanks for adding those little details that my brain would say, it's too much to process. Let's not do that. But ChatGPT forces me to say, add those additional details because the task will get done faster and you'll be able to articulate that better.
At speed, right?
So, on top of that.
The cool part now, what you're saying, I mean, again, so many different ways we could go on this, right? So with ChatGPT, one of the biggest things I talk about is let, people are like, hey, what won't we stop being critical thinking? And I use the analogy of, because I'm in an academic setting, let's talk about, and I know we all will know exactly what I'm talking about. Do you remember doing that 8th grade term paper? And you'd have to walk to the library, and you'd walk to this massive little bitty drawers, right? There'd be like 100 of them, right? It's like we're walking into Hogwarts, right? And I have to figure out what I'm looking for, how I'm going to find it in this file, this card catalog, translate the Dewey Decimal System to find it on the stack, right? And then build an outline, have my thesis, realize that what the 1 or 2 books that I found on the shelf aren't going to be enough, have to go to the periodical guide, dig up the bibliographies of these articles, identify these articles, go to the microfiche machine, dig up the microfiche machine and look at these microfiche, and then write my paper. So imagine if I were digging into the crust of the earth. How deep could I go using what I just described? I'm digging with a shovel. Think of how we transitioned to the internet, and then we had Google, and then we had Wikipedia, right? And oh, by the way, that all came with its own kind of risk. Wikipedia, anybody could go in and add anything. But I still got deeper, right? I still got deeper. I'm getting deeper into the surface, right? I'm able to go deep into this research topic in a shorter amount of time. And then ChatGPT comes out, and now, oh my gosh, I almost can get to the center of the earth in that research topic.
That's right.
Because I have sped up the methodologies and that other thing, right? I blow past all the stuff that's in the old card catalog. I don't have to translate the Dewey Decimal System. And I am able to go, all that mundane stuff that burnt my energy when I was in 8th grade, I'm able to not bypass it, but I'm able to speed that process up. And now I'm getting into deeper thinking and deeper part of this topic, rather, in 2 weeks. Hey, look, you have to turn this term paper in 2 weeks. Okay. How far, if you were digging a hole, how far could you get in 2 weeks if you just had a shovel? How far could I get if I had one of these huge buckets that move 5 yards of dirt, right, in one swipe in 2 weeks? And that's the analogy that I go into this thing. Do you want to do your job with a shovel? It's honorable, right? It's honorable to do it that way, right? But how about you look at the steam shovel and take what can you discover in 2 weeks if I gave you a steam shovel, or if I gave you an excavator, right? So those are some of the things that you're talking about ChatGPT. So I'm sitting there going, okay, I need something that focuses me. And I got on ChatGPT and I'm like, hey, I'm looking for an acronym. We all love acronyms, especially in the military.
What we do?
Right? Okay. And so I said, hey, look, I want to take the word audit, because that's, as I'm going through trying to figure out what my next steps are, as the dust is settling around me, I'm trying to figure out, okay, what's my next space? And I got on ChatGPT and asked some questions. And you're right, it gave me the outline, it gave me the bullets, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't think about that. I'm going to drill deeper in that little, right? I'm going to drill in that topic. I'm going to drill down a little bit. So, and I didn't pull it up. I just thought of it when you were saying, it's like, what do I do? What do I need to do in the next 30 days? Well, A came up as analyze. Where are your data generators? Where are your data consumers, right? Where are the people sitting in the room that could benefit from data generation, right? I'm looking at, they talk about data is the new oil, right? We know who uses the oil, but is there anybody in the environment that could use it but doesn't know they could use it, right? So yeah, and that was all in a couple days,
right?
Asking questions. I mean, just the enhancement. Right. I think Lucky said in the pre-show about AI. My goodness, my brain just lost. But I took it as an enhancement, right? The guys that go to the gym, right? Oh, I got to get my pre-workout on, right? It's an enhancement.
Right.
The augmented interface.
There you go. Augmented interface, right? So, hey, how do you perform? So I had an opportunity to go to Data Universe in New York City. I sent Asif the link. Totally cool, right? I mean, this is me. One, it's in Manhattan. I'd not ever been to Manhattan. Two, it were all these people that I'm like having to research, like, who is this person? Who's this person? But there was a keynote, and she stood up and said, hey, look, I don't want you to think of AI as a replacement. I want you to think of it as an enhancement. I was like, holy smokes, I love that. And of course, this was back in April. So I've walked a little further down the data science road since then, but with that in my backpack going, holy smokes, it's not going to take your job, it's going to enhance your performance. So,
like when we talk about AI, we think about artificial, we talk about intelligence, augmenting intelligence is the best intelligence. But how Nevin Taylor would put it is that, we've had BI, we had AI, now we're moving into CI. What knows about CI, we'll find out once CI starts showing up everywhere, right?
Right.
Because it kind of goes back to the conversation about identifying, labeling, and decision making. But before we jump into that conversation, I'm pre-show we had a good laugh about Google. Lucky, how do you pronounce Google again?
Glue glue.
That's the best viral, probably a long time ago that happened, and I'm just.
You said something about a nerd joke, and I'm like, I love it. Right?
You got to be able to identify yourselves. We can see ourselves in the crowd. Sometimes we don't want to be in the crowd.
Right.
We know when we're in the crowd, and we have ways of showing it. But yeah, we have nerd gear that we all love to every once in a while wear. That kind of, it's usually a conversation starter, to say the least. And
that's exactly right.
And there's certain things, and getting back to what you were saying, there's certain things that I needed to, or I wanted to know more about how you start, because the AI is one of those things that it's really one of those things that people look at and we have to demystify. So how do we start to kind of get the smoke and get Oz out of the back and say, hey, you know what, you're not so much what we thought you were. But so when you start talking about your data strategy, AI really comes down to what is it? How do you see it when you think about AI? How do you apply it, or what is your data strategy, or how do you start to kind of say, hey guys, AI is one thing, but this is what we're doing, and kind of break it down to where the layman doesn't see. We talked about earlier Skynet and the fact that we're losing our jobs, and somehow we're gonna not have any way of providing for our family. So without going that extreme, how do you see your data strategy starting with AI, and how do you start to build that?
So for starters, there's a couple things that, and I've had an opportunity over the last few. So our school just started in August, and we had some of our students. We have about 1,000 students this year in my current responsibility or role, which is curriculum. It's not just for everybody's sake. My data interest was pure hobby, pure curiosity. And that curiosity has paid off into my new position as kind of the chief advisor to the provost of the Army University, right? And so a lot of that, there were some things that I've kind of traveled along with, but it's building, like you said, it's building that kind of connection. And I've got to demystify AI. And I usually start off with saying, hey, let's get some terminology, right? So what everybody wants to know about right now is ChatGPT. Well, that's generative AI, right? AI is this big thing. And now we're going to talk about large language models. So let's get the terminology right. And then I've given them something to where it's not AI, right? AI has been around for, that idea and the capabilities have been around for a long time. They didn't just pop up in 24 months. So that's kind of how it starts. I talk about, if you were to walk down to Home Depot and buy a table saw and bring it home, you're not going to be Bob Vila the first time you turn it on, right? And I usually get a little bit of a laugh, right? Okay, because what I'm trying to do is get the connection that AI, Gen AI, ChatGPT. Oh, by the way, did everybody know there's others? Claude and Gemini, right? I bring up, I appreciate bourbon, and I usually get in the crowd. I'm usually talking to officers who appreciate Scotch and different types of spirits. So I get some interest there, and I say, do you know that in the bourbon world, there's only a handful of distilleries? But if I walk down the shelf of any beverage store, I can see 30 to 40 different brands. And what catches your eye? The bottle. So I say things like some of the platforms that are out there that are AI. I say, hey, do you know those guys are working off of the anthology, right? Or what is it? Sorry. And the OpenAI framework and this framework, right? And they've built, what they've done is they've tailored it to a specific requirement. And then that brings me into the requirements, right? That whole thing. But I've got to figure out, how do I communicate to get into the room? And now that I have a title, I can get into the room, and now I can carry the water and say, hey, there's some great things.
Just to say,
please.
Followed by Anthropic. That's what I meant to say.
Anthropic, yes, sorry. Anthology is the parent company of our learning management system, right? So, which is another thing I've kind of evolved into a bit of a super user in Blackboard, just because it was an interest in my current job. And, it's funny, I was looking for all these different little outlets that I could leverage technology in the different modules. But
while we're at this, acronym and labeling stuff, I just want to point out quickly that Air Force's Data Vault, which for a while, I was like, oh, Data Vault. You think Data Vault means they have a vault and they have data in it. But it's an acronym, right? And Nevin Taylor always pointed that out, because he said it's vault means visible, accessible, understandable, linked, and trusted data platform. So we know those kind of informations.
Yeah, no, and what's funny about that is, as I'm digging in, my scope has changed, right? So now I have to change my view, right? My line of sight is different. And so I'm digging into the DoD strategy, the Department of Defense strategy. There's a federal data strategy that's out there. There's all these things, and saying, hey, what things can I, because again, in any organization, the sub-organizations have to have objectives that support the overall. Well, that's probably where I need to start. I think I got way off topic of Lucky's question. I hope I was more entertaining than informative, but
No. There's a lot there to unpack.
Absolutely.
Data strategy can be a lot of different things. Um, i- in some cases, we'll just give you, like you said, in government, it all depends on how, downstream and upstream and downstream.
Right.
How are you receiving the data and what format? There's contracts that they work with certain vendors. At the end, it comes in a certain way, and then you got to filter that data through your mechanisms. And
Yes.
how good is that data ready for your processing, at that point to deliver something statistical, or we start diving into, how are you going to use statistical analysis, or are you using some kind of newer, machine learning type of algorithm? I'm from the old school. We would just do statistical analysis of variables, and we would build up a predictive, what I in my time was more of a predictive analysis model, but it was more of a hypothesis between variables.
Right.
And now we have true predictive learning models, and that's a big change. And what do you see from that data? And that's kind of, the space that we're all learning. What are the big benefits to each individual model's specificity or technology? What are the advancements in looking at data using with linear regression, statistical modeling, or clustering, or the model itself does it all together, and you just see what comes out? You're like, okay, what am I going to see? You don't know until you don't know. I mean,
no, absolutely. You bring up a good point. And so back on track. So my data strategy, right?
Yeah.
We're starting to do data literacy, and the model that we have begun with was the Jordan Morrow. We started off kind of out of that book. He was a big player at the West Point training thing that I had gone to. And so that's the language the school has chosen to use. So you bring up a great point, is that everybody knows what descriptive analytics and prescriptive, and they know what the levels of analytics are. They just don't know the words. And what the realization was is the techies, the professionals that dealt with that know what they're doing, would use the language, and the decision makers knew what they were talking about but didn't know the language. So was it like we talked about earlier, is a translation thing, right? So I think the data strategy, first off, is to walk the fence line and determine what's inside my fence line. Identify the people, right? The hills and the valleys, and in the military we have what we call dead space. I can't observe it, so I need to get out and walk into it and find it and see what's in there, right? That's going to be my first piece of JB's strategy, data strategy, right? But then also helping the decision makers understand what's inside that fence line also, because like I said, post COVID and post this AI hype thing, the world is different. What you think you know may not necessarily be what you know, right? And I think it was a conversation we had earlier in the week about common sense, right? Don't start with common sense, drive to common sense. And I used that when I spoke on Thursday. I used that again. Hey, look, it sounds crazy. Don't start with common sense. What? Don't start with common sense? No, because the world changes too fast for your common sense to be accurate. So drive to common sense, right? Prove something, instead of starting from a known, right? Turn around and walk back to the known from the unknown.
Yeah.
And because that's what we do when you're lost, right? If you're out hiking, you do a 180 and you walk back to a known point, all of us that have been in the military. So you can use those kind of analogies to get after what kind of Lucky was saying, is those are the connection points, right? So I guess to answer your data strategy in one word is connection, right? I got to build connections.
Yeah.
And with connections comes trust, and with trust comes communication, right?
It's beautiful to see how people's mind evolve. But when it evolves, I think in a 4-year setting, it evolves in 4 years, because you see the final product at the end of the 4 years of going to school.
Right.
But in the AI space, because things are moving so fast, it's like I really am hoping that within 1 hour you will get everything you need to know that you would otherwise learn in a 4-year school, right?
Mhm.
And that's kind of push that we are having. But 10 years ago, if that was the push, like I would have had a different lifestyle today, right?
Mhm.
10 years ago, we were dying to have people understand data literacy because I was really working on things that I couldn't really work on um, because of people's inability to understand data and seeing the sophistication of how to work with data was so out of their need on a daily basis. They didn't really look at machine learning. They didn't really look at AI. So 2016 we were talking about geospatial data recommender
Mhm.
system, and
Mhm.
say here's a recommender system right here.
Yeah.
This is operated using machine learning, right?
Mhm.
This is AI. It just we don't call it AI because nobody
Right.
else calls it AI.
Right.
So machine learning has been around for so long.
Yes, it
Machine
has.
learning
Absolutely.
has really gained our trust for so long. But if I can take an hour and tell you, look at all this machine learning and tell me that's not AI, right? Or tell me what AI you want. What does AI look like to you in the future? So
Mhm.
more we know about past, more we understand the future, right? So let
Yes.
me give you one example of what happens to people that are looking at the strategy and saying, well, strategy is 5 months or 5 years down the road. Let
Mhm.
me understand my tactical situation, as
Right.
in, what do I have right in front of me that if I don't engage on today, everything's going to catch on fire, and there's no fire department out here to put it out.
Mhm.
I'm it, right? I'm
Right.
the
Right.
responsible owner of whatever that's in front of me. So one of the things that I do in an hour-long conversation is to say, please learn how to ask questions. And when you ask
Yes,
those questions,
absolutely.
don't expect the answer to be what it is that you want, but don't also look for the answers that you think is the right one, because
Right.
that's your false positive, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And tying that into it is that you have to understand within an hour what a quadrant looks like.
Mhm.
And this is what I mean by that quadrant. Any machine learning you will ever see or understand, it starts with the hardest work of writing a quadrant,
Mhm.
Y and X, right? And filling out this quadrant to say, I will do what I have done all of my life, and I will do something called decision making on a decision tree, right? Simple as decision tree, and say, in that quadrant, I have true positive, true negative, false
Mhm.
positive, false negative.
Mhm.
If I can answer these things without having any hesitations on my strategy or my tactical position today,
Mhm.
I have a data strategy that I can work with, right? These are the sort of things that I think we all have the appetite for, but we just don't have the time for it.
Right.
Everybody else is moving so fast. I'm not talking about some foreign countries. I'm talking about U.S. Air Force is moving faster than Army. What is Army doing? Is
Mhm.
Army going to get beat by the Coast Guard?
Yeah.
Is the Coast Guard going to have AI? So everybody's appetite is so much that they don't have the time to say, I really need to sit down and do this for 6 months. Nobody has that appetite for that. They want to learn it easy and quick. And the
Mhm.
easiest and quickest data strategy I can develop for somebody is to say, if everybody in this room and everybody in this data strategy for 5 months or 5 years can come down to this 4 quadrants
Yeah.
and say, oh, okay, so I know why my data strategy is so important, because anytime I think about data, where does this data fit into this true positive and false positive, right? How do I work myself backward? So you become super analytical
Mhm.
because you say, how do I either fit the data into it, or how do I make this work for me using the data that I already have, right? So uh, this is a just an overview of what happens with machine learning, because if you start from that quadrant, you can work your way up to 5 days, five
Mhm.
months, and 5 years, right?
Mhm.
And then you can reverse engineer again down to this point. So US Army, has this challenge. But here's the thing. Our leadership knows that nobody cares about whale oil anymore.
Mhm.
But if you lived 100, 200 years ago, you wouldn't live a life without whale and oils. because you don't think about oil today or any way associated with whales. But
Mhm.
that was the biggest trade off the planet, was that whales. And our U.S. Navy, our military would say, anything we have to secure that whales that is
Right.
caught in the
Right.
ocean, and then we have to bring it to the seashore, and then do whatever we have to do in order to generate power in everybody's home. Not using necessarily a candle, but oil burner, whatever that case is.
Mhm.
And that is something that I point out over and over to say, you just don't know what you're going to be worried about in the future. But I can guarantee you one thing you will worry about is your data strategy.
Right.
Did you have a data strategy 5 years ago, or do you need one 5 years later?
Mhm. Yeah.
Because, and I will give you one surface level conversation that comes up, is that they say something, now it gets to data privacy and everybody stops talking.
Yes.
For me, something, data privacy, and now we start talking. Because you can talk about all this surface level
This is going to get hot.
That is, yeah. So the back of the hair, the hair in the back stood up as soon as you said data privacy, because we've had that conversation, right? So, the number one question about DoD developed GPTs, right, is the critical information, right? The it's not secret, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the privacy of your data recipients, right? So so in our world, we're looking at, hey, look, I have 1,000 students, right? I need to do some analytics on predictive performance, right? Based on my faculty, my curriculum, and my students, right? Well, I've got to protect their identity, right? Because the stuff that comes out of this may not be good, right? But it's important for the organization to know so that you can fix it. So that's another thing, right? And then talking about, the critical information of, well, we don't want our adversaries to know this stuff, and especially don't want them to know it when it's aggregated, right? So if Ballard asks a question about Taiwan, and Lucky asks a question about Taiwan, and Asif asks for does a query on Taiwan, can our adversary then look at it, aggregate the three concepts together, right, and come up with what we're doing? That is such a crazy conversation, to the point where that's the first thing people go, you can't guarantee my data privacy. Mm-hmm. I'm not listening. The rest of everything you said before data privacy is irrelevant to me until you come and say you can deliver data privacy. My competition, my competitive advantage, right, is not at risk.
Yeah. And I think when I go talk about the whale oils, it ties back to that data privacy. You're so concerned with data privacy, the definition of privacy will change dramatically. And when it does, we have to really tell ourselves, like, the world that we live in, because of, and I hate to say this, but let me put a pause there for a second to say, because of other data privacy violations, we have some data privacy today, right? And we are benefiting from millions of people's data being sacrificed in the altar for the privacy that we can talk about today, right? The benefit of having that data privacy. It goes without saying, because we're a bunch of history fan over here, because millions of people died. That's why we're here.
Right. No, exactly.
Millions of people's data privacy got violated, so we can have some data privacy.
Right.
But like I said, that's where the conversation starts, actually. Not where
absolutely. You talk about, man, this is such great conversation. Privacy. If I go, I'm outside of Kansas City. If I go 4 hours to where I bird hunt, and I walk and knock on a door of a farmer and ask for a definition of privacy, and if I go down to where you guys live, down in the metroplex of Dallas-Fort Worth, and I go to do the same thing to an inhabitant of that mega city and knock on a door and get a definition of privacy, what do you have, right? You have a very diverse definition. So your job as a data integrator, right, is how do I make that into one thing that the farmer in Garden City, Kansas, and the electrician in Euless, Texas can agree upon, so we can move forward.
Right.
I don't think privacy can be and maybe I'm wrong.
Right.
I don't think privacy can be anything but binary in order to move forward.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge. How do you do that? Right? Because in our society, we have an individual right to define privacy. In other places in the world, the government's going to tell you what privacy is.
That's right.
And now you're operating at an unfair advantage.
Yeah.
Because of who we are in the world compared to who they are in the world, we're at a disadvantage. So how do you do that?
Well, I guess I don't want to be like, I know the solution, but I'll start up with TikTok. I'm just, and like a lot of people have mixed emotions about it. But look, you have to live in a world where 8 billion or 9 billion people live. You're not living in a world that doesn't have 9 billion people in it. You will never get that.
Exactly.
So now how do you make data privacy work? I guess beyond TikTok, it'll be the edge. And beyond that edge is the decentralized data centers. So you'll have all sorts of, edge AI and other sort of AIs that are going to have edge data centers, right? So those things are really piping up at this point because people are realizing that's how much data privacy is valued by a lot of people. So in my silo, as much as I can say data privacy is a block in the way, but at the same time, it's moving the needle forward a lot faster than data strategy. We don't have a data strategy, but we have really a lot of solutions that are being developed based on data privacy. And that's moving the needle a lot faster. And not having a data strategy makes that whole lot more complicated, right? So data strategy is AI strategy, period. Because if we had data strategy 10 years ago, we would have AI strategy handed to us with every AI that's coming out.
Right.
But then again, people are on the opposite side will say, well, if we had a data strategy, we would never innovate any of these AIs, right? Because like I said, other people's sacrifices of their privacy has led us with the AI solutions that we have today. And you can see that with New York Times lawsuit, you can see that with AI lawsuits, you can see all the lawsuits that are happening on YouTube.
Exactly, yeah.
So if I have to say anything about data strategy, is that we really have to understand how machine learning works, because you really want to pivot away from other people's data and look at your own data. Your data acquisition process, your ability to look at data mesh, data fabrics to say, these are my data.
Yeah.
Why am I not using them? Why is AI so not personal to me? Well, it's because your data acquisition process never talked about a data strategy to develop an AI. So these days, what we see a lot of is that companies say, well, let's say data privacy. And then we say like, okay, I don't want to talk about it. It's getting too sensitive. I want to get out of this room. Okay, let's pivot towards your policies only, right? You have SOPs, you have policies, you have manuals that you follow. Have they been updated for the purpose of AI? Have they been updated for the purpose of AI? Let's call it Zoom. Lucky's gonna love this conversation. Zoom 3.41 is coming out, and we need to update 3.41. But does my policy allow 3.41 to be installed in my system? How would I know that? Right? Is your system allowing an AI-enabled Zoom 3.41? It's a made-up number, by the way. And my policy dictates that, none of this automation stuff is going to fit in my policy, right? So you have these data privacy, data policy, or just call it a policy period, and then nowhere is there's a data strategy to be found that fits the privacy and the policy, right? So if you were to integrate all of these, would you say everybody will agree on data strategy? I think that's where a lot of people shake their hands like, yeah, everybody. Like, no. We don't, because we're not educated about the data strategy. We're very well.
Exactly right. Yes. So when I went and spoke to a class of senior leaders. I went in crazy. I went in ready and prepared to talk about the process of data literacy and AI and that sort of stuff. And because it was a noontime lecture, lunchtime lecture, it was I don't want to say rules, but the rules of engagement were much different than if we had a more formal, hey, look, we're doing it before lunch or doing after lunch, right? So it was a very informal kind of conversation. And we hopped on the road of ChatGPT that quick. And my takeaway on that was, and I'd seen it before, right? I mean, I had experienced it before, but not at scale. There were 60 people in this room, and I'm used to smaller groups of not that many. And the thing I took away from that is the audience was more concerned or more interested in the tool than the process to apply the tool.
That's right.
And so to go back into the strategy, right? And this is the JB strategy, right? As I go forward, not the Army University, not what I'm going to present for the Army University strategy, data strategy, is how do I satisfy the curiosity of the tool and then educate on the process so that when we get done with our engagement, we have educated to the process and they understand the responsibility of applying the tool and where the tool fits in the process. And that was something else that I kind of walked away with. And I think data privacy is going to be the same thing. I hung a couple things in the chat that you can edit out if need be, but and I'm not sure of the etiquette of talking about things that I've read about and by who. So you mentioned quadrants. That's a really cool article by Nick Taleb, who wrote The Black Swan. Yep. And he talks about kind of the black swan and the quadrant. And as soon as you said that, I was like, holy smokes. 12 years ago, I was reading that and I was building how that fits to uncertainty, right? And complexity and your ability to handle that, right? And then the second one is a company that I had an opportunity to talk to, and they have developed an engine that an organization, you can hang it onto your network and you can get outside to AI and it'll strip off what you want it to as far as privacy goes, still allow you to query inside of the data science or outside of your network. Mm-hmm. And then when the responses come back, the engine then places the stuff stripped off back on it. So you get that information. And I've heard through a mentor of mine that a federal agency has begun working with them on that. Because imagine, you're an intelligence agency that you work on the high side, everything you do. And because you work on the high side, all of the stuff that's on the low side, all the capabilities on the open side are, you can't access that capability, right? You have to build it because it has to be partitioned out in a separate thing and everything like that. So that was a solution. Getting back to, again, the data privacy, right? Because people have lost their lives, we've had to change things, right? And it was unfortunate that people lost their lives, but that's the process of humanity learning, right? I mean, think about the plagues and all the different things that have happened that we've had to go, hey, it's a good idea now to wash your hands, right? Why is that? Well, if you go back to England and talk about, this and this and the same common water fountain that everybody, yeah, right? So yeah, you got to kind of treat it the same way. And those are all the things, as we start talking, those are all the things that I have to put in my kit bag walking into a room, a very diverse room of hey, I love AI. AI is going to make my job easier. I don't trust AI, right? I'm not going to use AI. So now so absolutely. So that's going to be my big thing on strategy is like, it's got to mean something to everyone. It has to be achievable for everyone, because if you can't achieve it, you're going to get, your people aren't going to buy in. Your organization's not going to buy in if they look at your strategy and go, I can't accomplish that, right? And they're going to turn off on you before you even get started.
So
Yeah, I faced quite a bit of the same type of challenges early on in a large organization, and the thing, we've touched on it quite a bit, and we've talked about it early on before we started the podcast and the pre-show. But is one is your strategy, right? And this
Mhm.
is where, and the other part is where everyone else is struggling naturally because it's like a fish out of water.
Mhm.
Data
Yeah.
science and security or regulation,
Mhm.
just it's almost like data science individuals work on creating data solutions, and then security isn't natural, and that's where
Mhm.
regulation kind of comes in. You have people now on the government side, they're saying AI, we got to secure AI. Well, if you look at it, AI is not really different. It's not much different than what we've been doing in the past,
Right.
but just the technology now is a little bit more. It's been rebranded,
Right.
and now, because our data privacy has not been great in the U.S.
Mhm.
And now we have algorithms that can take advantage of the data sets. Now
Yeah.
these data vectors is now we're really focused in, okay, how do we secure AI? And that's the regulation. It's all new. We're still trying to figure out, okay, how do we stamp regulation on these big companies taking advantage of all this data sets?
Mhm.
The big companies are the ones that they have access to the stuff that we're concerned about. Our privacy data. So we have in one hand we have data privacy, and the other we have these algorithms that are taking advantage of this
Right.
data. So how do we secure? A lot of the regulations new. They came
Mhm.
out with the president came out with the new AI regulation here recently, and so we're trying to take that and create governance. Okay, how do we create governance inside our organizations? And we have to define what AI is, the different types of
Right.
technology. You start with that, and you really start to make it real. It really we've talked about it several times. Demystify AI,
Yes.
make it
Right.
more tangible,
Mhm.
less Skynet, and
Mhm.
you'll start to touch people. But again, it's the security part is, I think, that's making things a little bit difficult on the AI side. I look at it still very simply. You have a data source. Who
Mhm.
owns it? Is it your data? Is it someone else's data?
Mhm.
What is the risk to that data, and how do you transmit that data and access it? A lot of that really hasn't changed, and so I think that we really need to focus in on the basics of what data is, and then go from there. But again, it's what is your strategy, what is the regulation, and then
Mhm.
how do you protect your
Mhm.
your organization? And there's
Mhm.
a lot to unpack there, but those are the basics. I think if you
Yeah.
start there, it's not that scary.
So, like we talked about in the pre-show, right? So I have a new boss, right? And I love, when Asif and I talked a couple days ago, the identifiable labeling and deciding, right? Like that resonates. If you can boil it down to that. So I have a new boss, a new director of our school was talking about the four, and I don't know if we brought this up because I'm blending between pre-show. Just the vibe, man, is amazing here on this. What you guys got here. So, talking about requirement, what do you need to do, right? Resources on what you need to do, how do you do it, right? And that can be people, time, equipment, whatever, money, right? Resources. The authority, do you have the authority to apply the resources, to use the requirement, right? Is that legitimate, legally your requirement, right? Is that in your authority to make the decision, right? And then the fourth one is the risk, right? The risk of what's the third and fourth order effects, right? To get what you want to accomplish. And I think you summarized that amazing.
Yeah.
And as I'm sitting here, right, I'm having like a drone moment, right, where I've got this drone up above watching everything and picking up and recording everything, because what I'm taking away from this is there's industry conversations, and I'm inside of a fence line, inside of a DoD organization that operates off of a whole different language. I've got to be able to interface industry speak into our speak,
That's right.
so that it resonates and they go, oh, I understand that, right? So your requirement is the other thing too, something you said, Lucky, that it piqued a comment was, back in the day when landowners would buy land, companies would come in and ask for mineral rights. I think it happened a lot down in y'all's neighborhood, right?
Yes. Yep.
And now there are people who don't own the land that are not necessarily as well off as the people that they sold those rights to.
Right.
So you have speculators. I think we've moved into a new thing where you have data speculators, and they go, oh, hey, you know, the Command and General Staff College, they have 1,000 kids come through every year.
Yeah.
You know, if we could get our hands on that data,
right,
we could make a lot of money or do whatever, right? And so we have to be aware as an organization of other people snooping around in our data. Just because I'm not using it,
yes,
I got to learn how to use, you said, use your data, right? I got to learn that I have data and that I can use that data. And then I have to be wary of people knocking on the door going, hey, you know, I got this really cool thing. If you let me in, I'll only look at this little thing.
Right.
And next thing you know, they're pumping millions of barrels out of your data generator.
That's right. That's
right. And you're going, wait a minute. And now I don't have data and I have to go to them to get my stuff.
I want to, you know what? Oh my God. Like literally what you're saying is giving me a goosebump, because if I could get people to understand just the point that JB just made and everybody talk like that, it'll be the first day of data literacy, and it'll be the only day that you need to say, today we got serious about this. Right?
Yeah.
From now on, right? We have total knowledge of data. Because, okay, I'll tell you one thing about leadership. Leaderships are pretty much somebody who has aged beyond my age or close to my age, right?
Right.
So when I first started, for me to think about data processing, and I'll tell you, 10 years ago when I was doing data processing, batch ETLs and extracting, finding sources, blah, 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 I said, I probably don't even know what year I will end this project in, because that's how long it takes.
Yeah.
Before we jump off this call, I just want to tell you exactly the use case you just mentioned. I've seen it being done in less than 10 seconds, as in data was found and data was processed, and they made a machine learning use case out of it.
Yes.
God, like it took literally no time whatsoever.
Right.
It was like, find the data, process that data, make a machine learning out of it, and start doing predictive analytics. And I'm done with it in 45 minutes.
Yes.
I cannot emphasize that enough. Like that is how data has shifted from being processed over the years versus in 45 minutes and so, right?
Right.
Goosebump, exactly. It's so important. Like this is data literacy 101 right here for 2024, you know? Yeah, you're on mute, Lucky. Go ahead, Lucky, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. It would take me, I'm getting goosebumps, but it would take me a year and a half to write a statistical database or, you know, a data warehouse. And now people just have a data set and they just point their data set and start applying statistical analysis in a matter of minutes, like you said. And it's just unreal how easily it's
I did a University of Kansas data boot camp about a year before AI came out, and looking and finding, you know, getting in everybody's repos and stuff, trying to find out how people were doing things, reading code, that sort of stuff. Hey, this is what I want to do. And then I have to read through and translate and go, well, does that really do what I want it to do? Because again, what I found is that you can code in Python so many different ways and come up with the same outcome, right? So then AI comes along and I'm like, I want to do this thing. And I open up and I go to ChatGPT and I type in, just like I'm talking to my English pointer, hey, Winston, I want to make this, 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 and this, and I'm using Python. And I don't know what I'm doing in Python. Can you please show me? Bloop, there it is. Oh, cool. Hit the little copy button, drop that into Notepad, strip off all the gobbledygook, right? Take that, drop it into my Jupyter notebook, right? Push. Oh, so wow, look at that. It did exactly what I want. Oh, by the way, I'm going to one-up you one, right? Hey, psst, Claude 3.5. Huh, wonder how well that, oh my gosh, my code just it did the same thing and abbreviated, right? So not only am I learning how to code Python using ChatGPT, I'm able to make my code more efficient by applying another platform of AI in an afternoon. In an afternoon.
That is
I mean,
it used to be so hard to do that. You'd struggle to like a month to get everything right, and now it's
yeah,
that
my
easy.
fluency in Python is off the charts just since OpenAI came out.
That's right.
Right? But it tells you, here's an imperative of applying AI that I've found, right? You have to have a prerequisite knowledge inside of the subject that you're trying to leverage AI, right? If I don't know anything about quantum physics, if I were to type in ChatGPT and say, write me using a 5,000 characters, write me a story on quantum something or other, right? Explain, I have to explain quantum. I wouldn't know if it was right or not. And it might only be to bring back the old days, right? It might only be 3.0 work.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know how to take that information and bring it up to a 4-point level, to a graduate level. So that's another takeaway with this. Hey, look, it's not a panacea. You have to know, just like the guy we're talking about buying a table saw at Lowe's or Home Depot. Just because I buy a really nice table saw does not make me Bob Vila.
As
Right.
as Gerard from our team would say, a fool with a tool is still a fool.
Right. That's exactly right. Yeah. And what's funny about it is,
I like that.
Is in academia, we're so worried that students are going to leverage this technology in academic malfeasance, right? They're gonna misrepresent their knowledge and stuff. And I have to say, I'm gonna use that, right? A fool with a tool is still a fool, because I tell these guys, look, they're not going to be to your standard by using AI, because you need to understand how it works, right? And they scrape the internet, right? It's a large language model. It has all these parameters, right? They're all over the place, and they're based on the weighting of what's in front and what's in back and all this other stuff. It doesn't just, hey, tell me about the Army funding process. I don't know anything about the Army funding process. Looks good, sounds good. Right. And that's the other thing. I'm getting all like, oh man, you guys, I'm thinking this stuff and you bring it up and I'm like, holy smokes. Right. And so
there's other people that think just like me.
Yeah, right. It was funny because I've talked to Chris Sailing quite a few times, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what you guys were talking about. It's like, I was thinking about that. And she's like, it's amazing when you find your people, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy smokes. Yeah. And you're like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah.
This is fun.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta tell you,
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
We want to continue this conversation probably offline, but onto a next episode, because I think JB, we found a returning friend, if I may call you that.
Oh, please do.
Can we call you JB?
Please, I insist.
We're on the JB side.
We're on the JB side. Exactly.
No more Jason.
But JB, I couldn't thank you enough for making the time on a Sunday morning to just nerd it out a little bit, right?
Looking forward to the next one. The what is it? The dopamine from this past hour and a half. It's going to last me a couple days.
So, Lucky, any departing thoughts so far?
No, JB, thank you for the great conversation today, and I admire you for what you do. I have the same passion in life, is to help others in education and mentor, and thank you for your service. But
it's my pleasure. I can't see applying. There's a Bible verse, to whom much is given, much is expected, right?
Yes. Right.
And there's another back half of that, right? So for to whom men give much, much is expected.
Gotcha.
Right. So what our community gives us and provides us the opportunity for,
right,
it's our job to give back to our full capability. Right. I mean, that in essence is why we do this, right? Why we inhabit this rock.
That's right.
And so to make things better for everybody, despite what their beliefs are or whatever, it's how do I improve? How do I take care? How do I protect?
That's
and
right.
So that's
Well,
that's service, and that it's never been, it's been difficult, but it's never been hard.
Wow.
Right? Never once been hard.
So JB, again, one veteran to another, thank you for your service, and thank you for your continued service in what you're doing with the Army University. And best of luck to you. And until the next episode of AyAyAyAi, take care.
Absolutely. See you later, guys. Thanks.